Secrets unfold, true crime stories, let the intrigue be told. Grab a seat, get cozy, let's dive into the plot. With Mac J by my side, there's so much to be sought. Mods from the stars, they light up the night. Chillin' with Van, everything feels just right. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. Sun. Oh. Spirit time vibes with Lisa and Mark. Tia and Mel igniting the spark. According to Lean, curiosity flows. A curious rose in a garden of woes. Sweet misery whispers, tales that enthrall. While Matt, Meg, and Jody, we gather them all. Welcome to the mystery, the thrill we embrace. Solving cases together we'll trace. With Tabby and Maggie, the journey's begun. With laughter and stories, we'll shine like the sun. Sun. So come along, join the fun tonight. In Aussie true crime, everything feels so right.
Hey, beautiful people.
Hi, everyone.
We've got Miss Jody in here. She'll be coming back in here, hopefully.
Yes.
I shared it, so I'm just going to share it on the Discord. Because I mowed the yard today, so I'm behind. Copy link. What was I doing? Sharing it on Discord. Two seconds. What a week we've had. I was just telling Matt J. We've lost a juror this week. Fun. Got that many Discords, I can't even find my own. We're just having a quick chat about Idaho and how much shit someone is in for all the information that was leaked to Dateline.
Yeah. Crazy amount was leaked.
Well, the judge is after them, so they're going to find out who's done it.
I wonder how much they'll have to pay for, damages.
I don't know. I wonder how it's going to affect the case. That's my fear.
I don't know. I wonder if it'll jury selection or something like, or whether the defense can claim he can't get a fair trial now or something.
Okay, it's posted on Discord and on the Facebook page. So, today we're going to be going over. We were off court Monday because we didn't have court, and then Tuesday, Wednesday is what we're going over today, and then tomorrow won't be as long because we've got Thursday. Oh, hang on, Thursday, Friday. Friday was only half a day, so tomorrow's isn't as long. But we'll get started with this one. So this is week 3, part 1. And we started on Tuesday, the 13th of May. We begin the third week of court proceedings in the Erin Patterson murder trial. The day begins with a statement from a friend of Erin Patterson's son. So the friend stayed the night at Erin's Lenegatha home on July 28th, the day before the lunch. He recalls going to see a film with Erin's daughter and son on the day of the lunch before returning to the house and seeing all of the lunch guests. I don't remember what was on the plate. There were some plates in the kitchen sink. I think they were white plates, he says. So we did hear about this kid or this boy last week that when the sun got up, but yeah. So as we enter week 3 in the case, it's a crisp, sunny autumn morning in Morwell. The public gallery in Latrobe Courthouse is full, with members of the extended Patterson and Wilkinson families returning to fill up the rowers' seats. All 15 members of the jury are back after a long weekend, and Miss Patterson is in the court dock wearing a green top and a brown cardigan over the top. I'm surprised we're not getting pictures of her in the court.
Yeah, me too.
We've had one.
You would think it's one. Yeah, you'd think we'd get more. I mean, everyone knows what she looks like anyway.
Yeah, but we've only got one. I think it was in a pink cardigan, and it was a drawn one. You know how they draw them. Okay, so the testimony... Yeah. The testimony of the friend finished. According to the friend's testimony, Erin's son and his friend helped themselves to some of the desserts brought by the lunch guests. He recalls in his statement seeing the guests leave and describes the mood of the host as ordinary. Erin just seemed like her normal self to me, he said on the day after the lunch. The testimony concludes and the statement of Erin's son, flying instructor, is up next. So they're just going back through who's been there. Senior Monash health doctor is called to the witness box. Hang on, did we miss one? Hi, beautiful Kaz.
Hi, Kaz.
April T, welcome in.
Hi, April T.
So Rhonda Stewart is the next witness and is presented... Hang on, I think I missed one, did I? Because we just said we were talking to the... No. There's a flying instructor up next. Oh, okay. Rhonda Stewart is the next witness and is presented in the courtroom. She is a doctor and the Director of Infection Prevention and Epidemiology at the Monash Health. She tells the court that she was asked to interview Erin Patterson regarding a public health issue in the days after the lunch. Professor Stewart says she met Erin face-to-face in the emergency department alongside Simon Patterson and their children. Erin asked if the family could be excused while she was interviewed. Oh, here he is. So the flying instructor, we did go through a few on Tuesday. So it's a lot of just quick bits. The flying instructor's statement heard in court. so he didn't actually turn up. It was just they read his statement. The court is now hearing the statement of Erin Patterson's son's flight instructor. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, but it is on screen. But yeah, that's
Ulysses Ulysses Villalobos. I know the first one's Ulysses, but after that I'm lost.
I say that, I'm like, how do we pronounce that? In the statement, he confirms that he only gave one lesson to Erin's son and 2 others needed to be cancelled due to poor weather. He described Erin as a typical mum taking her son to his flying lesson and was proud of her son's progress. The instructor says on the day after the lunch, he rang Erin to first postpone, then cancel her son's lesson due to the weather. He says she got grumpy with him and asked why he didn't cancel the lesson earlier, and he says he explained the circumstances behind the cancellation. This is the end of his statement. Aw, spirit time. Thank you. Villalobos. Names are not my good thing. It's one thing I'm not good at, especially when they're long ones. So the doctor interviews Erin about beef Wellington lunch. Professor Stewart says that he asked Erin what happened at the lunch and how the meal was prepared. She told me that she came because her children needed to be checked out and because there had been a lunch and there was a concern they may also be affected, she says. She tells the court that Erin said she had scraped off the mushrooms from the meal she served to the children, and Erin also said that she had been sick with gastro symptoms, Professor Stewart said. What I think was...
Yeah.
I asked her about the mushrooms because that was the concern at the time, Professor Stewart says. The other pack, she said, she got from an Asian shop several weeks prior. She says Erin claimed the original packet holding the dried mushrooms from the Asian store was now gone. When I asked her about the dried mushrooms, she said she used the entire lot. Erin blanked on the Asian grocer. What a coincidence.
Yes.
As we heard several times during the trial, Erin Patterson could not recall to Professor Stewart where she allegedly brought the dried mushrooms. She also could not tell Professor Stewart the suburb in which she had brought them, and denied foraging for mushrooms. She told me she was having lunch with her ex-husband's relatives, Professor Stewart says. Professor Stewart says that when she commented that it was a nice thing to do, despite the separation, Erin told her it was common. She said that was not unusual and that she still had a good relationship with them. But didn't they say last week it was the first time they'd been invited to her house?
Exactly.
Another shot. I think this case has got so many red flags.
It's a walking red, like everything. It's a blaring red flag.
That's why I put the little red mushrooms jumping. You know? Erin told the doctor she brought the lunch leftovers to hospital, court hears. Professor Stewart says she then asked about any remains from the lunch. Did you ask her specifically about any leftovers of the meal? Prosecutor Sarah Layton says, Yes, I did ask her that. She did say there were some leftovers she put in a bag in the rubbish bin. She also mentioned that she'd brought some leftovers into the emergency department, but there was no evidence to me that there were leftovers in the emergency department. She says after the interview, she checked with medical staff and learned Erin's blood work had come back looking fine and showing no ill health. Surprise, surprise. It has more holes than Swiss cheese. It does. It's got more holes than Swiss cheese. I think Spirit Time's probably sick of hearing this because it's all he hears all week. So the next witness is Laura Muldoon, who is the emergency register at the Monash Health. She's being questioned on the stand by the Chief Prosecutor, Lynette Rogers, who is Dr. Rogers as well. I don't know why she is known by doctor if she's a lawyer, but anyway. Dr. Muldoon confirms that she saw Erin Patterson on July 31st, 2023, and took information from her about how she had become unwell and the symptoms that she had reported. She says there had been a concern Erin may be suffering from death cap mushroom poisoning and she'd be transferred to Leongatha Hospital. She says Erin was being given an infusion for suspected liver damage due to the toxicity as a prevention measure. Dr. Muldoon says that Erin reported vomiting and nausea and was under the impression that she was sick due to food poisoning at the lunch she organised. I still think she only went there to find out information on the other kid.
Oh, same.
In my opinion.
In my opinion.
You got to put it out there. We don't want people suing us.
No.
If for some reason they find out she's innocent.
Yeah, right.
So Dr. Muldoon says Erin told her that she'd brought mushrooms for the dish from an Asian grocer in Oakley or Glenwaverry and said that she didn't have the packet anymore. Dr. Muldoon is asked if she made observations about Erin's health during that meeting, and she said yes. She had some chapped lips, but otherwise looked well, she says. She confirms blood results were all normal and remained.
How convenient.
Honestly, with the weather in Melbourne, every girl has chapped lips. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Remained that way the following day. Dr. Muldoon says there was no evidence of an aromatic mushroom poisoning and no sign of any other toxin substance being consumed. She says she delivered leftovers from the meal, which had been recovered by police to an expert for identification. If she's innocent, then I'm freaking Saint Nick. You're funny, Spirit Time.
Yeah, it's funny.
Okay, a photo. I wonder if after it we're going to get the evidence. Like all these photos, I've got hold of some, but a lot of the evidence is being held back from the public. So I wonder if we would actually get to see it once the case is. I hope we do.
Well, yeah, some of the other cases after the thing is over, they release them. Sometimes.
That's if it's not on a break.
Yeah.
We got heaps of breaks in this one too.
Ah.
So a photo of the beef Wellington leftovers is shown to the jury. a court is showing a photo that was sent to Dr. Muldoon from the Dr. Veronica Foote, we heard from her last week, at the Leongatha Hospital, where Erin Patterson first presented. The picture is of a beef Wellington leftovers, which were retrieved from Erin Patterson's bin. The image shows a piece of hollowed-out pastry placed on a white piece of paper with a teaspoon-sized substance which appears to be the beef Wellington filling next to it. They may release some, but they will keep a lot of the sensitive stuff back. Yeah, it's mainly the pictures. Well, there's a couple of bits of evidence I'd like to see.
Well, there's some, I know in the that case in Cairns, they showed some of the things, like the woman's teeth being found in the storm drain. So
Yeah.
it really depends, like whether you get whether the judge is it or what whoever oversees it is in a good mood or not.
I'm just thinking because it's, Jimmy, not a lot of our cases go like worldwide, but this one
Yeah,
has, so it's making me wonder if they will release them, if that makes sense.
yeah, it makes sense. But I also wonder if, because it's a big case, if an author who's plans to write a book makes a
Mm.
really good request and can prove that they're writing a book or whatever, then you might get some photos in the book, maybe.
Yeah. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yes.
So the leftovers were sent to the Royal Botanic Gardens by taxi, court hears. Now, I didn't know this, but I did find out this week through court, and I'm sure it's all in here, is like the Royal Botanic Gardens is right in Melbourne. We've been there many a times. It's huge. But I didn't know that they had all of these, all these research people actually work at the Botanic Gardens. And apparently the death caps grow from there as well, around the oak trees. So just a bit of side information. So the court hears Dr. Muldoon then went on to email the photo to a mycologist, an expert in mushrooms and fungi. The email stated the photo was of finely chopped and cooked mushrooms as discussed, and states the remains of the lunch were to be delivered to Monash Health and then eventually to the Royal Botanic Gardens by taxi on the same day. Now, Colin Mandy SC is up to cross-examine Dr. Muldoon. So Colin Mandy, for people that have just joined us, is the defence's lawyer. But a short break. The jury is being let out of the room for a short break as Justin Beagle says there's a matter he wants to raise with the lawyers in the case. It's quickly resolved and the jury is brought back in. The next witness is called for testimony, Dr. Varga Ragu.
Ragu? Ragu. Yeah, let's you go with Ragu.
Probably need to smoke. Probably. Another medical practitioner working at the Monash Health is the next witness in the box. She was an emergency physician at the emergency department in the following days after the lunch and was involved in the care of Erin Patterson on August 1st. Dr. Ragu says Erin had received an IV fluid throughout the night as well as the drug NAC for perceived liver issues. A liver function test found Erin's liver health to be all within normal limits. So as we know, with the death caps, the first thing they attack is our liver. Well, they attack our whole body, but the liver's the main part that gets damaged. So that's why they're trying to be careful. At 10:14 a.m., a review found her blood tests and vital signs showed no sign of liver toxicity, and that Erin was able to be discharged. Dr. Ragu tells the court that notes from Dr. Muldoon had indicated that Erin was not suffering from amygdalophallus, what's death cap mushrooms, poisoning. She wrote in her notes that there was no concern about the type of poisoning, Dr. Ragu says. She tells the court Erin indicated she had not vomited or experienced diarrhea at all in the time before she was handed over to Dr. Ragu earlier in the morning and had eaten lunch before seeing the doctor. It's because she was never sick.
Exactly, because she never ate the mushrooms.
That's the one thing that I still can't get in my head. When you make beef Wellington, you get a big piece of meat, and do you know what I mean? The paste, like obviously the mushroom goes over like around it, and then the pastry. But the thing is, you have to realize she didn't do that when she made it. She made individual little ones. So it would have been a lot easier to put the poisonous mushrooms into those and not into the other ones. Do you know what I mean?
Agreed.
And even though the kids had the leftovers, do you know what I mean? She'd already gave the poisonous ones away. In my opinion.
Me too, in my opinion.
So Erin's vitals measured 3 days after the lunch. Medical paperwork from August 1st is raised by the prosecutor, Sarah Lethal, recorded by...
Yeah, let's go with Lethal.
recorded by a nurse at the Monash Health. Erin Patterson's respiratory rate and her pulse rate, her blood pressure, her temperature were all within normal range. Did you deem her fit for discharge? She asked, and Dr. Ragu says, I did. That concludes her evidence, with the defence offering no questions. The next witness is Tom May, and he is due up but apparently has gone for a short walk, according to the prosecutor. Then so will the jury, Justice Beagle says, to a pearl of laughter, and the court takes another break. I'm told you a lot of breaks this time. So the jury's to hear evidence from the leading fungi expert. She was up for a while. The court hearing has resumed, and the next witness to give evidence will be Tom May, who is a mycologist at the National Herbarium of Victoria. He is one of the state's foremost experts in fungi. Where did the mushrooms come from? So we know she brought some at Woolworths, and she's saying that she got some at an Asian shop / sometimes she says Chinese shop. But we do know that, so the mushrooms mainly get like bred around oak trees in Victoria. There is 2 towns that had them. And her phone pinged at both those spots where the mushrooms were coming up. But she says she didn't forage them. She brought them from an Asian shop that she can't remember. And this is the thing. This is why it was such a big case, because, and me and Mac J have spoke about this a few times, if they'd sold it in a shop, they would have had to, do you know what I mean, find out so that no one else got these mushrooms. Yeah. We think she picked them.
I think she picked them.
Yeah, her phone pinged at 2 places where death caps were, and she also brought the dehydrator, what we went through on the Friday. It was brought right near where, like in a town where the mushrooms were as well. But she didn't forage them, she said. I think that's mainly what they're trying to work out in this case, is whether she intended to do it. And again, this is just my opinion. If she's not, do you mean telling them that she actually foraged for them? That puts intent to me. Because
I agree. I mean, plus having the whole dehydrator and throwing it away, and then not being worried about her kids at the hospital, and the list is endless.
Exactly, April. A lot more people would have been sick if she'd brought it in a store.
Yep.
We also know, April, that when she got this dehydrator, so she has 2 kids. The kids don't like mushrooms, and she was using the dehydrator to make the mushrooms into a powder and was putting it into muffins that the kids were eating because she wanted to see whether they could recognize the mushrooms in the muffins. And yeah, individual. So the plates we spoke about in the first week, there was 4 grey plates and 1 tanny orange plate. So all the guests had grey plates, and Erin had a tanny orange one. Her one was the only plate that was different. She does also say that the children had the leftovers the next day, but she scraped the mushrooms off for the children because they don't like the mushrooms. And that's where we're saying we do know that she made individual ones. She spoke, like the court spoke about it, instead of one big one. So it would have been a lot easier to put the poisonous mushrooms in the 4 individual ones that she wanted to give to the guests and have the other ones. And I bet you the ones in the bin would have been the clean ones.
Oh yeah, of course. She's just like unbelievable.
Asians cook and eat weird stuff, but I can't see them selling those mushies. It's not like puffer fish where you can avoid the poisonous, but I know. Well, by everything I've learnt more about mushrooms in the last 3 weeks than I ever want to know. But 1 death cap is enough to kill a full-grown adult.
Wow. So it makes you wonder how big
many
those. Yeah.
So the jury's to hear evidence from the leading fungi expert. The court hearing has resumed, and the next witness to give evidence will be Tom May, who is the mycologist at the National... Oh, I read that one. Too much talking. Not realizing that. So, Dr. May confirms that he is an international recognised fungi expert. Prosecutor Lynette Rogers, SC, is asking Dr. May about his relationship with the Victorian Poison Information Centre, and he confirms his decades-long links with the centre. Dr. May says that there are many hundreds of species of amenta mushrooms, of which death cap mushrooms, that's what they're called, is one. He says this particular species of mushroom grows near the oak trees, and the spoiling bodies of the mushroom appears at particular times of a year, and they're only come up for a few weeks. He says the death cap mushrooms orientated in Europe, but was accidentally introduced to Australia, but it's not clear when. It was first reported in Canberra in the 1960s and Melbourne in the 1970s. Dr. May says there is a symbolic relationship between the Amida phyllobies and the oak trees, because they only grow around oak trees. That's something I have learned.
Interesting.
And they're only for, as it just said, 2 or 3 weeks of the year, so the rest of the time they don't grow. And I do know there are apps you can get that tell you where they're growing and when. So they pinpoint right to where they are. Don't ask me why
Wow, that's
someone.
incredible.
It is, isn't it? So death cap mushrooms can be refrigerated, expert says. The court is being shown pictures of the death cap mushrooms, which Dr. May is being asked about. He says when the sporting body emerges, there is a cap and stream as well as a skirt of gills underneath the cap. And the cap sits at the base of the stern, the trunk. Dr. May is now describing the colour of the parts of the death cap mushrooms. It's quite a technical description by Dr. May of the mushroom. He says the visible sporing body of the mushroom lasts for a couple of weeks depending on the conditions and the insect infestations. Dr. May says that it may last a few weeks in a refrigerator, and he says commercial mushrooms tend to last longer. Can you tell? We do. So in up further we go, he shows pictures, but that's one thing I've realized is I think they look a lot like other mushrooms. Like it's not as easy to tell. You can't just look at it and say, oh, that's a death cap. So they're very similar to other mushrooms as well. But the fact that she went onto this app and looked where they were and went to that area
Yes.
is an intent.
Is an intent, yes, definitely. Be like if she didn't look them up, and it's just one thing in combination with everything else,
So the database of where death cap mushrooms are found. Dr. May says the distribution and location of the death cap mushroom is determined by a mixture of specimens collected and citizen science portals. These are then all brought together by data such as the Atlas of Living Australia, a publicity accessible online database. So that's the app, this Atlas of Living Australia.
Okay.
Prosecutor Lynette Rogers, SC, asked about citizen science portals and names of websites, and it's the iNaturalist. This one comes up a fair bit. The iNaturalist, what's a website? For fungi, the iNaturalist is the largest citizen science platform, Dr. May says. He tells the court more than 440,000 images of fungi in Australia has been posted on this site. Slides are shown,
Wow.
of screenshots from the iNaturalist website showing records of where the fungi is found on a map of Australia. A map of southeastern Australia with red dots pinpointing the location of the death cap mushrooms is shown to the court. So basically people go onto this iNaturalist and, do you know what I mean, they put photos up, especially, I don't think it's just death caps. They put all kinds of mushrooms up, but obviously that's how they know where these death caps are as well. After a quick Google, they are coloured yellow, green tops with normal mushies are white tops. Yeah, we'll get into the pictures and you'll see there are some up here. So Dr. May says a user can find the exact location of each observation of death cap mushrooms. You can get the GPS point for each location by clicking on the red point, Dr. Mayers says. I have put down the bottom, that's the iNaturalist website, and that's their logo. So I put that at the bottom.
Okay.
The iNaturalist website is one of the biggest platforms for logging the fungi operations. He tells the court iNaturalist is incredibly precise and can pinpoint locations of the mushrooms to a particular suburban park. The site shows the time and the date of the observation, as well as who made it. The court hears no evidence of the death cap mushrooms in China. Dr. May and the prosecutor are now discussing the distribution of death cap mushrooms around the world, using data from organizations that dedicate resources to mapping the spread of death caps. He agrees that they had first been reported in Australia from 1960, and he says the data did not show them being recorded in China. He said there was doubt about whether they were recorded in South Korea, Japan, or Far Eastern Asia. Dr. Mayer says a study of death caps from China in 2010 concluded that currently there is no evidence that the amida-phylames occurs, so the death caps. So what, they started in China, but they're not there anymore?
Yeah. But you'd think if they ever had them, it would be recorded in history, with all their medicine and stuff. So,
but they started in China because that's when they brought them to Australia.
Okay.
Dr. May tells the court about DNA testing that can be conducted on death cap mushrooms to identify particular species. A molecule fingerprint, we could call it like a barcode to identify individual species, Dr. Mayer says. Dr. Rogers confirms with Dr. May that no species had been tracked back to China. The molecologist tells the court that death cap mushrooms are found in a variety of locations across Victoria, both near Melbourne and regionally, like around the area. In Gippsland, Dr. Mayer says there are only 3 reports from Outram, Lock, and near Morwell. He explains to the jury that there are more reports in well-populated areas such as Melbourne than there would be in less populated areas like in the country areas. That's interesting. They must like the city. They're city mushrooms.
Yeah.
A slide is shown of the death cap mushroom reports around Melbourne. All these records just come from the random activities of citizen science and collectors, Dr. Mayer says. Dr. Mayer again tells the court that occurrences of death caps are only found around members of the oak tree family, and Dr. Rogers asked if there are similar looking mushrooms to death caps. They are certainly some mushrooms that occur in Victoria that are quite similar to the death cap, he says. He outlines the visual difference between the death cap mushrooms and some different mushrooms found in Victoria, such as a highly toxic marble death cap or memetro. What's the name of another mushroom? I didn't even know mushrooms had all these names. I thought they were just mushrooms.
Crazy, crazy, crazy.
So Dr. Rogers asks if there had fatal cases of people mistaking one mushroom for another. Have there been cases or possible fatalities where people sometimes visit to Australia have mistaken the death cap mushrooms for an eatable mushroom, Dr. Rogers says. There does appear to be the case, Dr. May says. They cover the type of soil and climate conditions required for the death cap mushrooms. The death cap is different from other mushrooms in that it will appear in summer. A slideshow is shown detailing the most frequent months in which death cap mushrooms appear in Victoria, and that's April and May.
Hmm.
Dr. Mayer says, in addition to information on the intent, a number of field guides to Australia fungi have quite detailed information and descriptions about the features of the death cap and its toxicity. Dr. Mayer tells the court he and a colleague published Wild Mushrooming to allow people to safely forage for mushrooms and included several pages to help people identify the death cap. I guess you really need to be educated to pick. Yeah. I wouldn't eat
Yeah.
any that I found outside. Like, I know as a kid, and do you know what I mean? We've lived in the city and the bush, but as a kid, we were always told to stay away from mushrooms out in the wild.
Yep.
Dr. May tells the court about the toxins found inside the death cap mushrooms, known as amatoxins. He says these toxins are a family comprised of substances known as amidos or manatees. Is it amenities?
Amenities, yeah. Or
Dr. May,
amenities.
amenities.
Yeah.
Look at all these big words I'm learning.
Yeah.
Dr. May says most native species have not been tested for toxin comparison. He also tells the court death cap mushrooms are not the only mushroom to contain these toxins, and some can be found in Australia. There are other mushrooms apart from amenities that contain amenities, he says. He cites mushroom species such as Congo flaris and a Lepeton, whatever that, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that one. So these are just the names of the different mushrooms that could have the toxicity in them, and which have been found in the country, but also they have been specifically tested for the toxins in Australia. Dr. Mays asked about previous mushroom poisoning cases that have been reported to the Royal Botanic Gardens. He says in May 2023, a Chinese tourist experienced organ failure after eating a mushroom near an old oak tree. Dr. Mayer also recounts 24 reports of people experiencing poisoning symptoms after eating the mushrooms, but says they were not the immunity, like they weren't death cap poisoning ones. Dr. Rogers signals that she will be switching topics now, and Justin Beagle signals it's time for a break. The hearing is resumed at 2:15. I can see why it's taking 6 weeks to do this court case.
Oh yeah, definitely. With all this sciencey talk.
So they were on a break, but they were doing like questions and answers. So I got some of them down as well. One of the questions that they put up was how did they conclude that it was mushrooms so quickly? And it took a couple of days for them to do this. This lunch was held on a Saturday, and by the following day, the 4 guests were pretty sick and presented to hospital. Initially, the doctors thought it was gastro or some sort of food poisoning, but when they did their testing, they found that there were abnormal liver function tests. As they started investigating the source of the meal, they became aware there were mushrooms in it, and as testing continued, the doctors said the tests began to resemble mushroom poisoning. The toxicologist got involved, named Dr. Mark Douglas, and he began to suspect the death cap mushrooms. The following day, the Monday, all of them started to receive specialist treatment, and they had a working diagnosis of the death cap mushroom poisoning. And this picture did come from the court, so that's one of the pictures they had. There's a couple I've got in here that I did get hold of.
Oh, wow.
So these pictures are from that iNationalist website as well. I do know
Okay.
that. Meanwhile, there were also testings being done on some of the leftovers that were found in the bin outside of Erin Patterson's house. And interestingly, they didn't find death caps in those leftovers. So there was a discrepancy between what was found in Erin Patterson's bin and the symptoms suffered by the guests. Within a couple of days, 3 of the 4 guests had passed. They all suffered from severe liver function problems and organ failure. Ian Wilkinson was the only one who pulled through, but he also had similar symptoms. When testing was done on the 3 people who had passed, they did not discover the toxins in the bodies of the 2 women. However, when they did the autopsy, what they discovered in all 3 was pretty typical of the death cap.
Interesting.
See, I think if they'd been given the antidotes earlier, they probably would have had a better chance. But it did take them 2 days to work out that it was mushrooms and the death cap as well, because they were holding that. They've said that earlier. They were holding the antidotes back because they didn't, like, they thought it was just food poisoning. They didn't think it was the death caps.
Yeah, it took a long time, but wasn't this during COVID when there was like a
Yep.
overflow? Yeah.
I think it was just after some of the lockdowns, because I know I was living in Victoria at the time, and I know we had, Spirit Time could correct me, but I think it was like 5 lockdowns.
Yeah, but yeah, Melbourne had a crazy amount of lockdowns.
We also heard the prosecution that the dehydrator that was used to prepare the mushrooms was found in the tip a few days after the lunch, and that analyzed revealed the death caps as well was in that, like the resin around the dehydrator inside it. One final thing to mention is the defence is not disputing the fact that there were death cap mushrooms in the meal. They don't dispute the fact that people fell sick with the death cap mushroom poisoning. They contest the element in this case is the intent and whether Erin Patterson intended to poison these people. The defence obviously says she did not. So we're not arguing about the mushrooms being there. They're just whether she intended to. Now, in my opinion, and I think Mac J has the same, the fact we know she went looking for them and the fact that she lies about where she got them from, to me,
Yeah.
is intent.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, if she didn't intend to do it, she would have just said, yeah, I found some out in the paddock. So another question was the beef Wellington taken from Erin Patterson's rubbish bin did not have death cap mushrooms in it. How's the prosecution explaining that? We haven't got to detailed analysis of that yet. There's still a long way to go in this trial, but what the prosecution has always said is that they believe the food that Erin Patterson ate and the food that was given to the children the following day is not the same food as what was given to the lunch guests. They say it may
I
have
agree.
been, yeah, it may have been
And
dressed up the same. Yeah,
yeah,
go.
I was just saying, it's like we said last week, um, that she was called to the hospital and she was making every excuse in the book not to be there, like even with her kids, she was, so she probably went and threw them away, during the
Mm.
all that time she had.
See, I think too, because she made them individually. Do you know what I mean? She most probably just made 4 with the poisonous ones, and then all the rest would have been normal, so that her and the kids could eat them. And the ones that would have been in the bin would have been the normal ones, because remember last week they spoke about how much they ate, and 3 of them ate all of it. And Gail only ate half, but Don ate the other half of hers. So all the poisonous ones were eaten on the day.
Wow.
In my opinion. So where was up to? They say that they can be dressed up the same. It may have been dressed up as leftovers, but the ingredients were not the same. And the key thing that's missing, according to the prosecution, is the death cap mushrooms.
Yeah.
Another question. I'm struggling with the concept of reasonable doubt and how it applies in the case. What is the bar, no pun intended, for reasonable doubt? Do the jury get any training, advice, or direction on what equivalates to reasonable doubt? The jury got some limited instructions at the start of the trial, and they get some really detailed instructions at the end once all the evidence and the closing arguments are done. But in summary, Justin Christopher Beale, who's the judge, told the jury that if Erin Patterson is to be found guilty, the charges have to be proved beyond reasonable doubt. Now, that is described as the highest standard of proof that our law demands, being probability of guilt or very likely doesn't quite cut it. It's kind of vague what it means, but the jury is told to use their common sense. It doesn't have to be 100% watertight when they look at all of the elements, but if they add them up and it all points one way, then it's beyond reasonable doubt. So basically the whole court is whether she intended to put the death cap mushrooms in the meal, basically. In Australia, some juries, this is another question, sorry. In Australia, some juries are allowed to discuss the trial amongst one another during the lunch breaks. They're strongly discouraged because you just never know who's in the cafe around you. There could be lawyers, there could be members of the public, so it's pretty risky. In the jury room, it's advised that all jury members be together for discussions and you don't splinter off into little groups and discuss the case. So they can talk about it in the jury room with each other, but no one else. And it leads us to something very big that Matt knows, but
yeah, I do.
something that happened with the jurors. So we're back from the break. The jury has returned to courtroom 4 and we're continuing with the testimony of Tom May, who's the fungi expert. Before the break, Dr. May was telling the court about death cap mushrooms, their toxicity, and where they can be found in Victoria. The prosecution, Lynette Rogers, picks up the questioning, asking about other mushroom poisonings over the last 30 to 40 years. Dr. Rogers asked Dr. May about death cap poisoning in recent decades. There is no central registry where the cases of death cap poisonings are kept tabs on. Dr. May says a Melbourne husband and wife who cooked wild mushrooms in 1996 or 1997 were poisoned, with the husband passing away in hospital. In the ACT between 1988 and 1998, there were about 10 cases of the death cap poisonings. Dr. May said another report analysed the period between 1999 and 2012 found 4 patients who passed from the poisoning in Australia.
Yes.
Hi, beautiful Eve. How are you, my darling?
Hi, Eve.
So Dr. May says the toxin mushrooms are also deadly to pets. which at least one case of a Cocker Spaniel passing away from ingesting the death cap. Dr. Rogers shows 4 photographs to Dr. May and says the images were attached to an email sent by the police detective on November 2024. The images are of mushrooms on the ground. Dr. May tells the court photos are highly consistent with death cap mushrooms. He says the yellowish green colour, small white patches on the top of the mushroom, well-developed cup, and white gills are key features of that's the proper word, but I'm just going to say death caps. Dr. Rogers asks him to circle parts of the image on the screen. The photos being shown to the court are linked to the citizen science website iNaturalist. Do you know whether these images appear or not on the iNaturalist? Dr. Rogers asks. I do know these images were posted on iNaturalist. They were posted as one record. Dr. Rogers says his opinion about the images overall. I would say, taking together the combination of the features, I would be, with a high degree of confidence, identifying those images as death caps. Prosecutor Lynette Rogers, SC, points towards the first 2 images of the 4 presented, which show mushrooms sitting on a metal scale. What can you say about whether or not these fungi or mushrooms, whether you're consistent with being death cap, she said. Dr. May again refers to the colour of the mushroom cap and the gills and the physical characteristics of the mushroom cap. He notes some parts of the cap have been eaten away, which was consistent with slugs or snails eating the mushrooms. I wonder if it kills them.
Me too.
Dr. May says other mushrooms could look the same if presented in the same way, but he judges them to be death cap mushrooms with a high level of confidence. Dr. Rogers moves on to the 3rd image of the set, which shows larger, rounder mushrooms on a scale with their stems cut off, weighing 490 grams. So they're just showing pictures to the doctor, and he's explaining whether he thinks from the picture they're death caps. She says again what species the mushroom could be. Dr. May indicates them as field or button mushrooms, pointing out that the black gills and the width of the stems with a high degree of confidence. Dr. Rogers turns the conversation back to the iNaturalist. Do you have a profile on that site, she asks. I do have a profile on the site, and the name is Funky Tom, he says. Dr. May then says that he himself posted an observation of the death caps at Outram on May 21st, 2023. They probably have some sort of antibiotic that fights it, kind of like how one animal can eat another. Yeah, it's interesting.
Very interesting.
The post is it's something I'll look into before the next show, whether it affects them. Because, yeah, interesting. The post is then shown to the court, and Dr. Mayer confirms the post is his. He says he was given a presentation to a local community group in Outram about fungi, and after going for a walk, observed the mushrooms. I put a very precise latitude, longitude, geocode in the location, he tells the court. So this is on the May 21st post made by Dr. Tom May on the iNaturalist website. So this is like a screenshot of what he put up. So this is an actual death cap there. You can see at the side where he's like his name, and they've got like the little map of Australia, and it pinpoints right to the very spot of where the death caps are.
Interesting.
When I was a kid, they were talking about bringing a snake into Australia to eat the cane toads in Queensland, but these snakes were highly venomous and would be more problematic than the cane toads. I hate the cane toads.
Oh, me too, but I don't know. Like, it's kind of a sport with the cane toad, if you know what I mean. There's a local sport.
My kids won't go out at night, and like all my kids, if anyone that knows, all my kids are adults, and they will not go outside at night because of the cane toads.
I don't blame them.
You ask my daughter to take some rubbish out, she goes, "No, there's cane toads at the bin. I'm not going." But of a day, you don't see any of them.
Yeah.
Defence cross-examination of the mushroom expert. So Sophie Stafford. So there's three lawyers on one side, and then you've got one on the other. So that's why there's three different names of all these lawyers. Yep, toad golf. That's what we used to play with them. I got to get a golf stick now. I've moved back up here. I remember before we moved down to Victoria, I used to have, I think it was like 2 or 3 golf sticks that used to sit by my back door. And we had a massive hill, and we used to just hit them straight over the hill. That's exactly what the golf sticks were there for. Spirit time, best game
ever. Toad golf.
Yeah. Good. And especially if the Americans are coming in, you've got to realise the cane toads in Queensland are a nuisance. Like, they're pests here. So we're not just hurting anything.
If they're on the road, you know, stuff happens if they're on the road.
Well, not so much here, you don't see it, but I remember when, like, again, before we left, we were living in Nerang on the Gold Coast, and you'd literally drive around the streets and just, there would be hundreds of them just splattered all over the road.
Yep.
Sophie Stanford begins... Sophie Stanford begins her cross-examination of Dr. Tom May and begins by recounting her experience in the field of molluscology and the myriad publications. Miss Stanford confirms with Dr. May that while deathcap mushrooms grow under trees in the oak tree family, other mushrooms can be found under those trees. The defence recaps the adamanity of the deathcap mushrooms, recounting the different colour and variation as the mushroom ages.
Interesting.
The jury shown the photos of the deathcap mushrooms from Outram. This is among the photos that the jury was shown the deathcap mushrooms identified. So again, this is the one by fungi expert on the Outrams near Lanangatha. So this is near where she lived, but it's the one that Dr. Mayer put up that was in Outra, and this was May 21st, 2023. Even worse when they grow sugarcane.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Where I'm located, there's a lot of sugarcane, and that. I'm sick of seeing toads.
That's it was good to get away from them when we went to Victoria. There's none down there.
Oh,
But you just got to put up with the weather.
that's true. Changes 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm. It does. So Erin Patterson's defense lawyer, Sophie Stanford, is taking Dr. May through the difference in the appearance between young and mature death caps, including the color variations and how they change. He says very, very young ones are white, but the color variations once the mushroom matures. So that's where they can confuse them when they're when their mushrooms are smaller, they just look completely white. Mr. Stanford is now asking about the ring of the stem of the death cap, and he says it's generally visible on all death caps. She asks if the ring can fall off older mushrooms, and he agrees. There are mushrooms with white gills that are not toxic, Miss Stanford says. That is correct, Dr. Mayer says.
Interesting. 10
Okay,
mushrooms.
I grew up
Cane Wolf. Maryborough. Sugar cane golf. Yeah. Yeah.
So Dr. May is taken to a series of 10 mushroom photos put up on the screen by the defence barrister Sophie Stanford. It appears to be a game of Guess the Mushroom, which Miss Stanford concludes is a somewhat artificial exercise. Miss Stanford says she wants him to identify whether the mushrooms on the screen are death cap mushrooms. The first picture shows a brownish mushroom next to a kitchen knife. The second one shows 2 mushrooms with long white stems. He says both resemble death cap mushrooms. The third shows the underside of a mushroom being held by a person wearing gloves. Dr. Mayer says some features appear unclear to conclusively say whether they are the death caps. For all of those images, there might be a possibility it could be something else, he says. Dr. May says many images can miscontinue the actual color of mushrooms, making it difficult to determine what a mushroom is. I would have brought it back out. The defense continues to show images of mushrooms, Dr. Mayer, and challenge him to make a guess about which mushrooms are consistent with death caps. He says many of the images are particularly obscured and make it hard to judge what species each mushroom is. Dr. Mayer continues to work through the images, pointing out the physical characteristics of each mushroom in each image to the court. So it must be harder to tell by an image whether it is or not. And of course, the court breaks. We reach the end of the defence's mystery mushroom gallery, and Justice Beagle calls for a quick break.
Mushroom gallery.
So the expert correctly identified 10 out of 10 death cap mushrooms. Before the break, Dr. Mayer was shown 10 photos of mushrooms, which he identified as likely death caps. Picture 4 was a close-up of the bottom of the mushroom. Picture 5 was a series of about 12 mushrooms, which Dr. Mayer noted appeared to be lacking the gills. Picture 6 was a decomposed mushroom in a plastic bag which had some dirt on it. Picture 7 had a mushroom which Dr. Mayer said was highly consistent with the death caps. It is a single freestanding yellowish mushroom near some brown leaves. So these are just the pictures that they were showing.
Okay.
It would be good to see the underside, he said. Picture 8 showed a white, tall, narrow mushroom. Picture 9 was 2 white, yellow mushrooms. and picture 10 was the top of a brown mushroom. The hearings just resumed, and Erin Patterson's defense barrister, Sophie Stanford, confirms the photos are all of death cap mushrooms.
Interesting. Mushroom recaps. Cap mushroom recaps.
Miss Stanford recounts many of the points covered by the prosecution in their initial questioning. Mainly, the death cap mushrooms are found all over Victoria but are only regularly monitored from in the Royal Botanical Gardens. Observations are more common in Melbourne than regional areas due to the relative population. And there were 3 observations of death cap mushrooms in Gippsland, near Loch, Outram and Morwell. And all 3 of them were near where Erin Patterson was.
How convenient.
Miss Stanford asks about a book published by Dr. May about the mushrooms. He says the aims were to provide authoritative advice for people foraging for edible mushrooms. Miss Stanford asked Dr. May if there are any simple rules for identifying edible mushrooms, and he says there are not. He says it is possible to analyze mushrooms for known toxins, but a lack of wide-scale testing means the most common way of determining how poisonous a mushroom is by observing symptoms after consumption. And like one thing that I have learnt through this as well is apparently when you eat these death cap mushrooms, they are really nice to eat. Like they reckon they're nicer than normal mushrooms. And for the first 6 hours after eating them, you are fine. It's just the rest of the time. After that 6 hours, you're just incredibly sick. And most of them said they didn't start feeling sick till midnight.
I wonder how, what size mushrooms she put in. Like, did she put in baby ones or big ones?
I don't know. But as I said, they said 1 mushroom is enough to kill an adult. So how many did she put in there? Miss Stanford. Oh, Spirit Time's cooking a roast and it smells so good right now. The whole house just smells. Miss Stanford asks about mistaken identity when a poisonous mushroom is mistaken for an edible one. Dr. May confirms this is the most common form of poisoning. Miss Stanford suggests that a lack of information about mushrooms could also lead to poisoning. She asks whether different species can grow together, and Dr. Mayer confirms both toxin and non-toxin mushrooms can grow alongside each other. The defense raises a study conducted by Dr. May about the accuracy of apps being used to identify poisonous mushrooms. Dr. May says some apps use AI technology to identify the mushrooms, and there was concern about the apps misleading Australian species. Miss Stanford cites an increase of mushroom poisoning reports in Victoria due to an increase in the foraging of them. Dr. May says in general the increase in foraging appeared to be the case, and the amount of calls did seem to be rising, but so too was the population of Melbourne. Do you agree the identification of mushrooms is difficult, even for expert molecologists? Miss Stanford says. Yes, Dr. May says. She asks whether it may be difficult to compare a live mushroom in the wild to an image of a mushroom in a textbook. Dr. May agrees it is challenging. So basically, only eat the ones in Woolworths, like in the shop. Dr. May confirms that the team found that phone apps had a poor performance in identifying the mushrooms. Miss Stanford suggests to Dr. May that the apps may not be able to correctly identify death cap mushrooms, and he agrees. She then raises another paper written for Fungi newsletter by Dr. May. This one was about foraging. It details a forager who believed they had collected pine mushrooms, but had in fact picked toxic mushrooms. The defense once again raises the term mistaken identity when talking about the case study. So I think they're trying to prove that she wouldn't have known they were death caps, even though she looked up death caps.
Yeah, it sounds really soft.
Mm.
I mean, it's a stretch for them to say she didn't know they were death caps if she looked up with a app. Plus, she was taking the photos. Didn't the kid say she was taking the photos like 2 years before or something?
Yeah. When they went for a walk or something. So Dr. May confirms to Miss Stafford that this had happened multiple times with people bringing mushrooms to him for analyzation that are in fact toxins. He says while initially in his career he told people to not forage at all, he now tells people to educate themselves and undertake an apprenticeship in identification. Asked if it would take years and years to become accurate in mushroom identification, Dr. Mayer agrees it could take a considerable amount of time. Ms. Stanford then turns the court's attention to the non-toxic stubble rose grill and begins pointing out characteristics that are similar to the death cap mushrooms. Dr. Mayer says in general, the gills of the stubble rose gill can appear pale from underneath. He says he has not heard of any poisoning cases regarding the stubble rosegill. And court adjourns. Miss Stanford says this is the beginning of an exercise and with more testimony expected from Dr. Mayer. Justice Beagle takes the opportunity to break for the day, and we hear more from the mycologist Tom Mayer tomorrow, with the defense continuing its questioning over the characteristics of the mushrooms, toxins, and otherwise. So that's where they broke off at the end of Tuesday. So what we heard today, the third week of Erin Patterson's mushroom murder trial has begun, with the testimony heard from a range of medical practitioners who treated the mother of two following a deadly lunch. He also heard from mycologist and expert in fungi and mushrooms who shed some light on the toxin death mushroom species at the center of the lunch. Here's what we learned. Erin Patterson claimed to have experienced diarrhea and vomiting after the lunch, but by August 1st showed no signs of death cap poisoning and was healthy enough to be discharged. Number 2, the mycologist Tom May confirmed only 3 recent observations had been made of death cap mushrooms in Gippsland, in Loch, and in Outram and near Morwell. It's better to say Morwell. Dr. May says he personally observed the death cap mushrooms near Outram in May 2023 and posted his observations with precise location data to the iNaturalist website. Dr. Mayer says that the mushroom poisoning is most commonly caused by mistaken identity when someone thinks they're collecting one type of mushroom, but the species is confused with something else that is toxin. Dr. May told the court that many apps are available to identify wild mushrooms and are inaccurate and can give wrong classifications. Hey?
Another update. Is
This is the start of Tuesday. So that was the end of Monday. Oh, no, I've got that date wrong. So this is the start of Wednesday.
Okay.
That's my bad because we had Monday off, what threw me. So Monday was off. Tuesday's what we just went through. That's my spelling mistake because this is Wednesday.
Got it.
We're here for more from the molecologist. So Tom May was called into the witness box on Tuesday and gave the court detailed overview of the toxic death cap mushrooms. He also revealed he was the user who posted the location of the death caps in Gippsland to a website in 2023, just months before the deadly lunch. Never heard of this case before, but interesting. Haven't you, Eve? It's so the basic rundown of what she done. We've done the first 2 weeks. It's a trial that's been happening. Like it was 2 years ago, but Erin Patterson was just a mum. She has 2 children to Simon, and that was her ex-partner. They were fighting over child support. We have heard lots about that. But she invited Simon's parents and his auntie and uncle to her house and gave them a beef Wellington dish for lunch. And by the time they finished and went home, by midnight that night, all 4 of the other guests that had come, like the mum and the dad, the auntie and the uncle, were all violently sick where they got sent to hospital. 3 of them passed away, and Ian Wilkinson is the only one that survived out of the 4. So she's up on 3 murder charges, 1 attempt at murder charge for Ian. She also had 4 attempt at murder charges on her ex-husband, Simon. So these were his parents and his auntie and uncle. We don't know why, but the attempted ones on Simon were all dropped right before the court case. So we're in week 3, and they said it was going to be a 6-week court case.
Yeah, 6 weeks.
So we're about halfway. And as I said, they're not arguing that the death caps were in the meal. What we're trying to work out is whether she actually intended for them to be in there. That's what the jury's got to work out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh,
What was
child support. That's all.
Yeah. She definitely didn't need money, because as we found out in earlier parts of last week, is that she had a death in her family. I can't remember who it was. I think it was her parents. I'm not 100% sure.
No,
But
grandmother.
a grandmother, that's right. And she got a lot of money from this. But we also found out she was giving everyone in Simon, who was her ex-partner, they were all given like $400,000 to buy houses. What was very interesting. So it wasn't like she needed money, but yeah, Simon and Erin were fighting over child support and children. Yeah.
And he wasn't paying. He was paying F all in child support.
Yeah, and she was changing the kids' school, so it was just a lot of fighting between them over the kids.
Yep.
Not that that's a reason to go after parents and aunties and uncles.
No, that's true, but I feel like I don't know, maybe it's like he's not listening about the child support, or he's something along
Yeah,
those lines, and so she just decides to get back at him about by unaliving those people.
yeah. So monocologist Tom May was called into the witness box on Tuesday did I read this one? And gave the court a detailed overview of the toxic death cap mushrooms. He also revealed that he was the user who posted the location of the death caps in Gippsland. Yeah, I did. On the website
Yeah.
2023. So that's the one we saw a little bit ago. That's all right, my darling. I will put them in a playlist today, but there are a couple we've done. I think it's like two. We done
Yeah.
week 1 and week 2 in one go. We've just broken up this week because we found we were on for like 4 hours and it was just too much. So we broke it up this time.
Yes.
So defense lawyer Sophie Stanford is resuming her cross-examine of the monocologist Tom May. When we adjourned yesterday afternoon, Miss Stanford was talking to Dr. May through images of different mushrooms. She raised an article written previously by Dr. May that explains the limitations in identifying mushrooms based off just a photo. He confirms this is the case. The composite image Dr. May is shown by Miss Stanford contains 10 pictures of mushrooms in various colours. Some are big, some are small, some are in the wild, some appeared to be on the bench. Dr. May said that he was able to identify 2 of them as being death caps. Miss Stanford raised previous statements by Dr. May where he said the general public had a poor ability to identify mushrooms, which he confirmed. The court hears a recap of the death caps. Bye. Grandson's gone. Every time he goes up, I get a big kiss and he walks up. She supposedly did this out of pure spite. Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. $100. So Miss Stanford runs down the list of characteristics of the death cap mushrooms once again for the court, these being the whitish yellow, pale brown and green cap, white laminate, what's the gills underneath, the white spawn prints, the vola, what's the cap, present at the base of
Oh,
strip. Hey?
base of strip, or is it stipe?
Stipe. It's like
Stipe.
the stem.
Okay.
Yeah, like the stem. The
Got
endless
it.
ring presented on, I'm just going to say the stem because that's what they're talking about. These are just the scientific words for them. That occurs under the members of the oak tree family. Dr. May said in identifying death caps, he would be looking for all of these characteristics to be present. Dr. May tells the court he errs on the side of caution when identifying mushrooms and qualifies his identifications with terms like high degree of probability and consistency when it comes to official matters such as police requests. He says in more casual settings, he will simply say what a mushroom is without qualification. Miss Stanford presses him on what Dr. May would do if a photograph was taken without showing certain features like the gills. Then you would be in a position to say, well, I can't rule out death caps, she says. Yes, that is the language I would use. Miss Danforth produces a series of photographs of mushrooms seen growing in Victoria, including the Gippsland. She noted this would feature as an exercise yesterday and says there are several photos to go through. All the photos are taken from the iNaturalist, the citizen science website used for logging flora and fungi. The defense says the first photo is of a stubbled rosegill mushroom, which Dr. May says he cannot confirm. Here is the first photo from the iNaturalist that the defense was shown, probably showing a stubbled rosegill mushroom, the screenshot of the iNaturalist page that is shown to the court. So again, you can see the mushroom that's they're taking the photo of, and they show, do you know what I mean, the part of Australia where down to the spot where it was found, and that's the red dots on the little map is where the mushrooms are. The bigger red dot being that mushroom. Two seconds, hang on. No, he's gone. Dr. May notes that the page is tagged with needs ID at the top, meaning the image by itself is not enough to accurately identify the species of mushrooms. Ms. Stanford notes the physical similarities between the stubbled rosegill and the death cap. So this is another one that was put up. Again, do you know what I mean? You can see the mushroom and the map of exactly where it was found. The second image is shown to Dr. May, and he says he is not confident that the image is in fact a stubble rosegill and would need further analysation. Dr. Stanford asks if the mushroom grows in Victoria and in particular Gippsland. Dr. May says he's not certain but would expect the mushroom to be widespread.
Okay.
Just more images that were shown that we did get. The defense continues its exercise in showing mushrooms to Dr. May, showing an image of, that's another big, like a name of a mushroom. Again, he's asked to identify them. Well, it's pretty silly when he sat there and told them he can't identify all of them. Ozzy just shared it on my channel. Oh, thank you, Eve, so much. You're a darling. Dr. May says that he has made more than 30,000 identifications on the iNaturalist and says he almost never offers an opinion if he cannot see the underside of the mushroom. He explains the red dots on the map in the image showing the alleged location of each mushroom. So this is the sixth image. Oh, hi, beautiful Bev. Welcome in. It's okay. You're not late. So this is the sixth image that was shown to the court. And again, you can see he can't see underneath, so he's not going to be able to say whether it is a death cap. But again, you've got the map of where it was found. So this is another one of the mushrooms that is shown to the defense. Once again, draws parallels between its physical appearance with the death cap mushroom. Miss Stanford calls attention to the brown cup and the white gills. This is the seventh one that was presented to Dr. May. All these pictures were on the iNaturalist website as well.
Okay.
So Miss Stanford says if if these mushrooms are toxin or not. I'm not aware of any cases of human ingestion associated with symptoms, Dr. May says. The exercise continues with the genus Amelia, or a honey mushroom. I didn't know there were so many mushrooms.
Gosh, neither do I. And guess what I bought this morning?
Mushrooms?
Mushrooms.
Oh, it's Kazjik.
Yeah.
The defence's line of questioning continues as it has for 15 minutes, pointing out the physical similarities between the mushrooms and the death cap mushrooms. Dr. May confirms that this mushroom would also grow in Gippsland. He says that the Victorian variation of these mushrooms is very bitter and unlikely to be eaten. It's now been more than half an hour of the defence presenting mushrooms that grow in Victoria and asking Dr. May about them. The questioning follows a similar... My name is for the Karen Reid trial. I did watch those Karen Reid ones that you sent me too. They were very interesting.
Yeah.
I have some opinions, but I'll chat with you about them later.
Yeah, I have my opinions on those two. On that case.
Yeah. It's now been more than... Oh, I've read that one. The questioning follows a similar pattern, asking Dr. May if they grow in Gippsland, if they share similar features of the death cap, whether they are toxin or not. The defence presents purported images of the shaggy pussilo, which Dr. May says is toxic. This is one of the mushrooms that, through the work of Victorian Poison Information Centre, we are aware is toxic to humans, Dr. May says. The butterfly, the buttery colubi mushroom is then shown to Dr. May, which he says does not grow in Victoria despite alleged observations on the iNaturalist. The questioning continues. God, this poor man's been on there forever.
Oh, yeah.
A discussion begins over the buttery colubi mushrooms, which Dr. May mentioned is highly unlikely to grow in Victoria. Miss Stanford, as she has about a dozen times this morning, asked that if it were to grow in Victoria, what similarities it would have to a death cap mushroom. There's a few
Hypotheticals.
that word, in there that I'm struggling to disentangle, Dr. May says. Distant.
Yeah.
These are the words they use. They're real big words. So Dr. May appears very reluctant to say the mushrooms could be found in Victoria, but conceals it could theoretically be found in Victoria. The similarities to the death cap and non-toxin of the buttery columbi are pointed out. We move on to yet another mushroom. And court breaks after another debate about mushrooms following identical lines of questioning for about 45-minute journey about the world of mycology is paused and Justin Beagle calls for a break.
Oh, man, imagine being on the jury and having to listen about mushrooms all day.
I know, like just questioning on this is a death cap. Is this a death cap? When he said how many times that you can't really tell from photos.
Oh my God.
At least you know if you've got to identify and send photos in. Make sure you take the underneath of the mushroom.
Oh, yeah.
Just want to excuse my grandson. He's up in the shower, so you might hear a lot of noise because he gets very vocal in there.
Yeah.
I wish I could. If we didn't move, I would have went to this court case. But we're a little too far now.
Probably packed.
I know there's only 6 spots for the media allowed, and the rest of it's because it's a very small. They're not doing it in Melbourne; they're doing it in Morwell, so it's a very small country courthouse. Because she wanted it close to where she was. So they're back from the break. The jury is led back into the courtroom as we return from the break. Dr. Tom May is still in the witness box, and Sophie Stanford continues her questioning. My mum asked my dad if he would like some mushrooms in his dinner. I can't even look at mushrooms now. As I said, I've learned more in the past 2 weeks than I ever wanted to know. Miss Danforth says that she had finished her exercise with the mushrooms. She again says, Dr. May, if there are a range of edible mushrooms that shared physical similarities, like colour, with the death caps, he says this is correct. Are you aware of any mushrooms in the Amido genus growing in Australia that are non-toxic? Miss Stanford asks. In terms of native species of the what's the mushroom, I don't believe we have information that confirms they are edible, Dr. Mayer says. Possible, but don't know. Just don't know. At least he's being honest.
Yeah.
Miss Danforth raises an incident in May 2023 after a Chinese tourist reportedly eating a death cap mushroom and falling ill. After eating a mushroom found near an oak tree, they experienced organ failure and were hospitalized, recovering a week later. A separate death cap poisoning incident in April 2024 is raised by the defense, and Dr. Mayer says he is aware of the case as made public by the coroner. Ms. Stanford says the coroner's report states the deceased person had picked a mushroom in their front yard and later used them in a dish consumed by herself and her son. Yeah, Spirit Time's not a mushroom eater. I used to like them, but after this case, I don't know if I'm going to eat them anymore. Oh, we must be getting dressed. He's crying. The defence guides Dr. May through the coroner report on April 2024 poisoning case, stating the facts of the case and making him confirm after each fact. So not stuffed mushies for dinner. No. I promise I won't cook that anymore. So this is what is written here, he says repeatedly. He says he cannot confirm any facts outside of the report. The report made several recommendations, and Dr. May says he was contacted by the Department of Health about responding to those recommendations. One of the recommendations was an increase in public health advice around mushroom foraging. I love them, but not getting same. I think I'm just going to take a big pass on all mushrooms now. Especially after this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, the death cat mushroom seasons in Victoria. Never liked them, but I can cook them so they're tasty, but yeah. Spirit Time actually cooks really good mushrooms, but doesn't eat them. But it's okay. I'm not going to ask him to cook me anymore. The court hears about the spread and growth of death cap mushrooms across Victoria. Dr. May confirms that although more common in April and May, they can occur at other times depending on rainfall. One thing I've realised, all of the areas have to be just right for them to grow. The defence presents a photo of a dried yellowish mushroom on a scale, which was also shown yesterday. After some long convolved questioning, Ms. Stanford has Dr. May confirmed that based off the photograph, he cannot rule out the possibility that the mushrooms are death cap mushrooms, nor can he rule out they are a different species. He says a physical characteristic match up with the death cap mushrooms. The defence concludes their questioning and the prosecution is back up. He might actually get off the stand soon. Lynette Rogers, SC, is brief with her questioning. Much of today and yesterday's discussion has centred around how death cap mushrooms look, but Dr. Rogers introduced a new sense, the smell. What can you say about the smell of a death cap mushroom as they age or dry? Dr. Rogers asks. When they're first collected, there's no particular smell, Dr. May says. I have dried death cap mushrooms on a number of occasions and I found their smell to be very unpleasant. After this statement, the prosecution finishes their examination and we bid farewell to Dr. Tom May. Put it this way, my old man loves mushies raw or cooked, but when he wanted them cooked, he would always get me to do it for him. When I lived in Victoria, they used to grow at the back of our house. I used to go as a kid and pick them. Bet you think twice about it now. Okay, the next witness is the Royal Botanical Gardens mycologist. We now have another fungi expert up in the witness box, and it's a colleague of Tom May's. Dr. Camilla Drogue is a research scientist at the Royal Botanical Gardens and specialises in the mycology. Dr. Turgan, is it Turgan? Explains that the Turg. These are the correct spellings for the names. I just don't know how to pronounce them. Explains the Victorian Poison Information Centre has an agreement with the Royal Botanical Gardens to often support. She says most cases are times when the VPIC, what's the Victorian Poison Information Centre, toxicologists call about fungi, and it is extremely rare for them to see physical specimens for analysation. The mushroom growers of Australia must be suffering big time because of Well, that's the thing, because she said she brought them in a store. Do you mean that's why they were so concerned? Because if they're in a store, other people are going to get sick. But no one did. On July 31st, 2023, Dr. Tong was the on-call mycologist and received a call from Dr. Muldoon at the Monash Health, who we heard from yesterday. Dr. Turgon says that she was informed about a possible poisoning case involving 4 people and was asked to help identify the mushrooms. She tells the court that after being sent photographs of the leftovers, she was unable to identify the mushrooms. And to my opinion, that's because the poisonous ones were already eaten.
Exactly.
A photo is shown to the court, which is the same photo emailed to Dr. Tong on July 31st. It shows a picture of the beef Wellington pastry and some of the finely chopped brown filling. I told her based on this particular photograph, I would not be able to give her identification. She said that they had been brought from a supermarket and a Chinese shop, I believe. So we're going to play the photo game again. Dr. Tong says that she told Dr. Muldoon it was probably impossible to be death cap mushrooms due to them only growing in the wild and being unable to be cultivated. I also told her there were absolutely no sightings of the death cap mushrooms during the last month, Dr. Tong says. Based on the information I received, it was highly unlikely to be a case of death cap mushroom poisoning. I get mushrooms out of my lawn, but I destroy them because my fur babies go out there. Yeah. I know pets can get sick, highly sick from them too. I'm lucky I haven't seen any around here, but we don't have oak trees either. At 5 p.m. that afternoon, Dr. Tong says she received a message informing her a package had been dropped off for her at the Royal Botanical Gardens. The package contained large, resealable bags with food inside. Dr. Tong organised for the leftovers to be brought to her house. She analysed the mushrooms in the leftovers under a microscope, but did you find any death cap mushroom pieces? Dr. Rogers asked. I didn't, Dr. Tong says. She then re-examined it the next day at the Royal Botanical Gardens, again using a microscope. Did you find any signs of the death cap? Dr. Rogers said. No, I did not. She tells the court the only mushrooms she found were field mushrooms that are commonly found in supermarkets. Because if you go back, there's a lot of different colours. They do have like the white underneath. I mean, the last expert went a lot into it, but he was showing a heap of different ones. And by what I'm getting in my head is they can look very similar to other mushrooms. Do you mean there is some ways of telling them, but they're very hard to tell the difference. Yeah. If anyone in the jury believes she brought those mushies at Woolies or an Asian store, they need them. I think Spirit Time put in earlier what Google says they look like.
Yeah, but you can't really always rely on what Google says.
Yeah.
Like, your specialist, it might look like one, but then you got
there was a
it's
lot of
too
characteristics.
difficult. Yeah.
Where was I up to? Did I finish this one? She found the mushrooms. I'm just going to read it again because I'm not sure if I've read this one. At 5 p.m. the afternoon, Dr. Tong says that she received a message informing her. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I read that one. The defence, Colin Mandy SC, is up for questioning of Dr. Tong now. He asks about a conversation she had with Mark Douglas following her first examination of the leftovers. Yellow and green top, and underneath it is white, like the wrinkly bits underneath the cap is all white. But as he said, he was showing 10 photos and couldn't say 100% if they were death caps. So even if they look like it, you've got to actually eat it to find out. They do, yeah. See, defense column Mandy's up. He asks about a conversation she had with Mark Douglas following her first examination of the leftovers. She tells the court she was contacted by many people in the days after the lunch, including the police and the Department of Health, asking her opinion. Dr. Mandy recounts a conversation she had with a doctor where Dr. Tong said there was a possibility of ghost or oyster mushrooms being in the leftovers. However, Dr. Tong denies she told doctors that there were definitely samples of ghost or oyster mushrooms in the leftovers. And I never knew there was so many different kinds of mushrooms. I think the only safe place would be to buy them from the supermarket. But yeah, they do look very similar. That's what I mean. You can't tell by a photo. If you look up the iNationalist website that we were talking about a little bit earlier, they've got all of, like, that's where they record them and put them up. If there's, like, all the different mushrooms. Dr. Mandy reinstates that the supply chains of supermarkets were regulated and that due to their total use of cultivation mushrooms, poisonings was highly unlikely. Dr. Tong says it was highly unlikely for poisons to occur. You right?
Yeah, just something fell off my desk.
That's okay. Just checking you're okay. Unlikely for the poisonings to occur even with mushrooms sold in small independent shops. The information that was available to you, there wasn't a record of people becoming ill because of mushrooms sold in shops, Mr. Mandy says. Correct, Dr. Toll says. I wouldn't even grow my own. Okay, we're back to the phone call that Dr. Tong had with the doctor following her first examination. Dr. Mandy asks about the conversation that took place between Dr. Tong and doctors on August 1st. She disputes this and says she does not remember the day. Mr. Mandy says notes obtained from the doctor during the call stated that possibility of ghost or oyster mushrooms in the dish. Dr. Tong disputes this and says they were simply discussing mushrooms that could theoretically be in the dish. The defense has no further questions and the prosecution also finishes and court breaks for lunch. Spirit time, my luck, I'd grow the wrong ones. Plus, you'd have to grow them. And we return from the break. We return for the afternoon session in courtroom 4. The prosecutor calls its next witness, Darren Cantry. So Darren Cantry is the operational manager for the waste management specialist at Dasman Group. The Dasman Group operates in Coonawanna transfer station and landfill where a dehydrator was found. So this is the guy that manages the tip. He tells the court he was contacted by police regarding the tip and made a copy of CCTV footage which showed a woman arriving in a red four-wheel drive. Footage is then played to the court showing a red car pulling into a large gravel car park next to a shed. A person gets out and opens the boot and is seen going towards the green shed. The person comes back, shuts the boot. Mr. Kenny confirms this is the footage that he copied and sent. Two more still images are now shown to the court from another angle. These are a bit more zoomed in from overhead, showing Miss Patterson's red car at the tip. And this is my thing too. I was always told from when I was a little bush kid, if it resembles a toadstool, don't touch it. Flat out white with a dark brown underside. Yeah, my nana just never let me touch mushrooms in the wild. And Jimmy, this is my thoughts too. If she didn't intend to do it, why did she throw the dehydrator out again? Because you got to remember, we're looking for the intent.
Yep.
We're taken back. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something? Or?
Oh, no, it's just agreeing.
We're taken back to the CCTV footage and some still images that had been picked out of it. Mr. Kearney says Miss Patterson's car can be seen stopped outside a storage shed which contains an e-waste bin, a bin for mattresses, batteries and other miscellaneous items. The following still image shows a woman carrying an item into the shed. Another photo is shown to the court of the black Sunbeam dehydrator in the e-waste bin at the tip. Yeah, I'm not touching none now either. Miss Cantry says police contacted him on August 4th with details of an FPOS transaction linked to the Kumabara transfer station and landfill at a certain time and date. A printout of the FPOS transaction is shown to the court, and Miss Kenny says he then matched the transaction against their own records. The transaction shows that the item deposited was under the category of less than 40 litres of e-waste. Because the only thing she threw out was a dehydrator.
Yep, exactly.
After identifying the item deposited, Mr. Kearney tells the court he had an employee look for the item deposited, describing it as looking like a microwave. He says a police officer came to collect it the same day. The defence has no questions and this concludes Mr. Kearney's evidence. Up next, a statement from Senior Constable Paul Burns from Wathangaddy Police Station is read to the court. Senior Constable Burns describes going to collect the dehydrator from the tip, taking photos of it from the e-waste bin. These photos are then shown to the court. Senior Constable Burns says he then wrapped the dehydrator in plastic and deposited it in the evidence room at the Woolloongabba Police Station. She knew exactly what she was doing. Yeah.
Yes.
The next witness called
Mushroom free zone here.
forever. The next witness called into the box is Professor Andrew Beston. Professor Andrew Beston is an intensive care specialist and was supplied with medical records relating to Erin Patterson. Dr. Rogers begins with the alleged cancer diagnosis. I don't know if Eve's still here. If she is, Erin used the reason of a medical condition to get everyone to the lunch. That's why they came. And when they went to the lunch, she was telling them that she had cancer, what she didn't actually have. So that's how she got them to the lunch. Dr. Rogers begins with the alleged cancer diagnosis. It is there significant evidence in Erin Patterson's medical files to support the assertion she was diagnosed with cancer, she asked. I could not find any evidence to affirm that statement, Professor Burston replies. Dr. Rogers asked Professor Burston about gastrolitis, its symptoms, and its causes. She then asks him about Erin Patterson's alleged illness after the lunch. He says there were three components to her illness: her initial presentation, the notes. I forgot about the yeah.
Yeah.
He says there were three components to her illness: her initial presentation, the notes from the ambulance service, and the notes from the Monash Health. Professor Burston and Dr. Rogers begin going through the series of events following Erin's first presentation to the hospital. They note a nurse documented liquid bowel actions and normal vital signs aside from her high pulse. Professor Burston notes points of care tests conducted on Erin Patterson, which provided rapid results. It found normal lactation levels. So one thing I have learned is that when you have this poisoning, your lactate levels go through the roof. That's the first way they can tell whether it's death cap. So she had normal lactose levels, normal urine levels, the creatine levels at the upper end of the reference level are slightly high, and the hemoglobin levels. This is why I'm not a doctor. Hemoglobin. Thank you.
That's it. Yeah.
Profession. Oh my god! I'm just going to give up on reading. Professor Burston says the readings were not consistent with dehydration. Earlier in the trial, we heard Don Patterson suffer from extremely high lactose levels following his poisoning with death caps. So the other four people had really high levels that were, I think by memory, one was normal and they were sitting at like 10 or something.
Yeah.
Erin Patterson was transferred from Leongatha to the Monash Medical Centre, where she stayed overnight. The notes from her ambulance transfer stated that she was stable during her transfer between the faculties. Her vital signs were within normal range when she arrived at the Monash. Dr. Rogers says the toxicologist cleared, I better call her Dr. Erin Patterson, cleared Erin Patterson at the Monash, and Professor Burston agrees. Professor Burston is asked about a stool sample taken from Erin Patterson designed to find the foreign pathogens. The indication is that no pathogens were detected, Dr. Rogers says. That's correct. Professor Burston is then asked to explain sophisticated blood and liver tests that were run on Erin Patterson. The tests were run on blood taken at Leongatha Hospital when Miss Patterson first presented. He says many of the results fell within standard reference ranges. I know. It's even in the court, we have news reporters from all over the world that have flown in just to report on this case. Like, it's crazy. And who would have thought that a couple of mushrooms would have done this?
Yeah. Crazy case.
Dr. Rogers asked Professor Burston his opinion on Erin Patterson's illness. I thought there was evidence that she had a diarrhea illness, he says. He cites a mild level of dehydration at Erin's presentation and slightly elevated levels of hemoglobin and fibrogen consistence with a sudden illness. However, he notes the illness did not appear to be severe and there was no other biochemical evidence of a liver injury. He again confirms to the court that Erin's vital signs were all normal otherwise. The prosecution finishes its questioning, and before the defense gets a chance to question Professor Burston, we head for a break. Restaurants would have to change some names of their dishes. I was reading about another case of death cap mushrooms because I'm learning way too much. But there was a case in Victoria as well. I can't remember, but it was a long time ago. And it was 4 people who had eaten death cap mushrooms in a restaurant, but the restaurant was shut and the owner had specifically cooked this meal for these people. And he admitted that he'd foraged for the mushrooms. So there was no case. Do you know what I mean? He was. And I think one person died from that one. Okay, we're back from the break, and Colin Mandy SC is up to cross-examine Professor Burston. He asks about the medical records of Erin Patterson provided to Professor Burston for his analysation. You never assessed Erin Patterson yourself, Dr. Mandy says. No, I did not, Professor Burston replies. Mr. Mandy then focuses on the hemoglobin levels recorded on tests of Erin Patterson's blood. He says her hemoglobin levels fluctuating during the course of the day, and then cities medical records from 2013 and 2014 showing Erin Patterson's hemoglobin levels were lower. Mr. Mandy says that 2015 reading was elevated when Miss Patterson was suffering from the gastro illness. Professor Burston has not seen these records, and the defence promises to provide them to him. So he didn't actually see her, but he got sent all of her results to analyse, I'm assuming, for court.
Okay.
Okay, restaurants are now off my list. If I disappear suddenly, look into it. Oh, I did not put mushrooms in your dinner. Stop it. Good dose of castor oil to give the impression she was sick. Probably. Last week, it was last week in court, we were saying that we thought she made herself sick so that she could go to the hospital to find, because I'm not going to speak for MacJ, but I think she was trying to find out how the other patients were. Because she already knew that.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So we think she was trying to get in the hospital just to find out, because she didn't want to stay. We went through all that last week.
No, she didn't want to stay. She didn't want to bring her kids. She wasn't worried about her kids getting poisoning.
Even though she quite happily said her kids had it, she just scraped off the mushrooms on theirs. But I have so many opinions, but I'll say it after we get our verdict. Professor Burston says he agrees the trend must be focused on, but notes the test may have been also done on different machines. Mr. Mandy then moves into Erin's potassium levels, which were low and consistently supplemented by medical staff with an IV fluid. By the morning of her discharge from hospital, her potassium levels had risen back within normal ranges. Professor Burston says the reference ranges of potassium levels depended on the nature of how samples were taken, but agrees the levels were low and returned to an acceptable reference range. There's not much to go now. We're nearly there. Mr. Mandy groups together Erin's symptoms, including her reports of the diarrhea, the abdominal pain, the low potassium, and the high hemoglobin. Professor Burston says, taken altogether, they found the bias of his conclusion that Erin Patterson was dehydrated and suffered from a diarrhea illness. Mr. Mandy needs to show Professor Burston some of Erin's previous medical records, so we're out for another 5-minute break. Period. Just no mushrooms. Just hold the mushrooms. That's all you got to do.
Oh.
Mr. Mandy confirms Erin's lower hemoglobin levels earlier in her life and finishes his questioning. The prosecutor begins the line of questioning back to Erin's low potassium. Professor Burston says there are many reasons as to why a person would have low potassium. He tells the court that stress and certain medical conditions can also shift potassium levels in the body. Dr. Rogers then asks about Erin's high what's that word again? Yeah. Hemoglobin, that's levels. Professor Burston says it could be due to dehydration or poor kidney function. She then asked whether Erin Patterson's symptoms could point to a more serious illness. Are those things consistent with severe illness, Dr. Rogers asked. They could be, yes, Professor Burston says. I can't wait till we get to all the police.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. So the court adjourns for the day. While the next witness is waiting outside the courtroom, Justice Beagle determines there is no time left in the day, so we will hear from her tomorrow, and court is adjourned. No, liver failure wouldn't be nice. But what I understand about the death cap that I've after going through it is that when it attacks the body, like once the poison hits, so you will eat the death cap, you'll be fine for about 6 hours. And they say that it is really, really nice to eat. But after that 6 hours, it will start attacking your body and it ends up going straight to your liver. So it destroys your liver inside. But once the poison goes right through the body, you'll have what they call a honeymoon period where you feel okay, and then it actually comes back and reattacks your body. And it will keep doing that over and over again until most people will pass away from it. If you survive the death cap, you usually need a liver transplant because it ruins your liver. Oh, hello, Miss Sharon. Part 2 is in 24 hours. Chilling with Van, how are you, my darling? So we had part 1 today, part 2 is tomorrow. We broke this week's up because it's been like 4-hour lives. So I've just got a few pictures at the end. So this was Don and Gail. These were the parents of Simon. They both passed from the death caps. I found a lot about Eve. I have learnt more about mushrooms than I ever want to know. But disbarcled, Miss Sharon. Yeah. My prayers go out to them.
Oh, yeah.
So this was Heather and Ian. So Ian was the only survivor. Heather passed away as well. I remember the first week Ian got up and was speaking about Heather, and I feel so sorry for him. He's still so hurt.
Would be broken.
And this is Simon Patterson. So this was the ex-husband who she attempted the murder on. I do have a screenshot. I'll get it for the next one. I found it the other day, and it was Simon talking about one of the other times that she had attempted to poison him and how sick he was in bed in the hospital, and the hospital had actually called his family twice for them to come and say goodbye to him because they didn't think he was going to survive. So I'll find that for tomorrow's one, like the letter that he wrote. I think that's it. And there she is. I try and find such good pictures of her. I think I do a good job.
Yes, you do. I see her face and I just, ugh.
And that's it.
Didn't she go on TV and say she was innocent or something?
Mm-hmm. I just want to point out too, in the background, if you can see this wall behind Erin here, this was actually in her house when the police went through it after.
Whoa.
That was one of her walls in her house.
Wow.
So I just thought I would put that up there so we could all see what Erin's mind is like, because, yeah, that's what police found.
Jeez.
In a search party together to track him.
No planning at all. None.
No.
No, she didn't plan anything. She totally didn't. That's just random, totally random things on a board.
Like, yeah. Just found that interesting. But anyway, that's it for today. We will be back at 1:00 tomorrow. Tomorrow's isn't going to be so long because I had 120 pages today and tomorrow's only about 60. So we'll probably only be about an hour tomorrow. You should have. I'll be back actually. My beautiful Van, we all miss you so much.
Yes.
We really want you to come back.
Yeah,
but other than that, we'll see you all tomorrow. I'm going to go because I know Spirit Time's nearly got our dinner ready. Very welcome, my darling. Please make sure you all hit the like on the way out. We miss you, my darling, so much. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks, MacJ.
Thanks. No worries. See you. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Aussie true crime on the rise. Investigate the scene, uncover the lies. From Melbourne to Sydney, all the way to Perth. No case too tough, we'll dig into the dirt. We'll crack the code, find the truth, bring justice to the table. No excuse, Australian legends in the game, bringing light to darkness, no shame. Just got a super child, let's celebrate. Raise a glass for all the cases we've solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. From cold cases to missing persons, we'll leave no stone unturned. Every virgin detectives in our hearts will never give up. But justice and truth will always hear us. Ooh, thank you so much. Let's celebrate, raise a glass for all the cases we solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. Thank you so much. Let's celebrate, raise a glass for all the cases we've solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. For all the cases we've solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. last for all the cases we've solved in the past. With eyes wide open, we'll never rest. Aussie true crime, we're the best. Thank you so much.